well, what's up, guys? Hopefully you all had a good day. So I thought I would come on this evening and do a bit of a review for the England andorra World Cup game, which which was obviously on tonight. So England beat Andorra by a goal to nil in what was to me was a very sluggish game. It wasn't a great game. I think, to be fair, I feel like we actually, struggled at times against Andorra today. I feel like, Andorra kind of made it a little bit difficult for us today. It wasn't really a walk in the park. Before the game, I was thinking that we were going to win at least 2 or 3-0 today, against Andorra. And I am a bit disappointed at the fact that we only won, 1-0. Obviously, I'm happy that we won the game. Of course, I'm happy that we won the game, but I'm just disappointed at the fact that we only scored one goal. I feel like against teams like Andorra, we should be scoring more than one goal, and the fact that Andorra, we're only scoring one goal, we're only scoring a goal against the teams like, and the fact that we're struggling against the teams like against teams like Andorra at the moment kind of shows where we are as a team, and it shows that there is a lot of work that needs to be done and there is a lot of improvement that needs to be made before the World Cup comes around next summer. You know, when it comes to next summer's World Cup, I want to be, as an England fan, I want to be able to go into that tournament, feeling very confident, thinking that England stand a good chance of winning it. I don't want to go into that tournament concerned that England are going to struggle, because that's kind of how the mindset I had going into the tournament and going into the Euros last summer. Now, I didn't have England as odds-on favourites to win the major tournament. I was, um, as far as I remember, I don't think I ever said England England were the favourites to win the tournament. I actually had Germany down as my favourites, as obviously they were the host nation. And I was thinking, with them being the host nation, surely they're gonna go all the way and win the tournament, But host nations don't always end up winning tournaments. We've seen. Um, but when I looked at England as we went into that tournament, I was a bit concerned. I was a little bit worried that we were going to struggle. I was worried that we were going to struggle against Serbia. I was worried that we were going to struggle against Denmark. And we kind of struggled against those two teams a little bit. We struggled against Serbia, and we struggled against Denmark a little bit. Um, but it certainly wasn't the most, convincing results in those two games. We struggled throughout the whole tournament. We got to the final on pure luck. Nothing more than that. It was unbelievable, today watching that team. When I look at the England team now, we're miles off of where we need to be. We're not at the level that we need to be at. And I am happy, I am gonna give Thomas Tuchel the time that he needs to, get England to where they need to be and to get England to the level that they need to be at to, be able to compete with teams like France, Spain, Portugal, Argentina, Brazil, etc., etc. Teams that at the moment are, miles better than miles better than us, by a country mile. There's no doubt about, when you look at the England team at the moment, you could say that we're not good enough to compete against the likes of France and Portugal and teams like that. We would, they would have a field day with us. But hopefully in a year's time, we'll be looking at a much better England team. Hopefully in a year's time, we'll be looking at a much stronger England team going into the tournament, and going into the World Cup next summer. Hopefully, we as England fans will be able to go into the tournament next summer with a lot of confidence. thinking that we stand, and we'll be able to say that we stand a chance of winning the tournament. That's what we all want. You know, I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done over the next, 8 9 months. You know, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, obviously, we've got the international friendly on Sunday. I am undecided on whether I want to watch that game on Tuesday rather. And I think I mean it's an international friendly, and I don't really bother too much with international friendlies. I'm not into those kind of games. I only really watch the England games if it's a World Cup qualifier or a Euro qualifier. You know, then I'll watch those games. Today, I was not impressed. As I said at the start of the video, we were very, very sluggish today, very lackluster today. That wasn't the best performance that we could have seen from England. The fact that we struggled against a team like Andorra shows where we're at. Shows that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And that there's a lot of improvements that need to be made before we get to the World Cup next. Before we even approach, we even start to think about the World Cup next summer. I'm not going to start, thinking about that until the new year. Because we're still months, we're still a year off of that. So we don't really need to be thinking too much about the World Cup next year just yet. We don't need to be thinking about that too much. You know, Hopefully we'll be looking at a much different England team by then. I mean, looking at the players that are out there on that pitch today, I don't know how many of them will actually go to the World Cup with England next summer. Harry Kane will obviously be, probably will definitely be going to the World Cup. Jordan Pickford obviously will definitely go. Trent, I imagine, will most likely go. Reece James, I imagine, will most likely go. I don't know too much about Jordan Henderson. Noni Madueke, I probably would take him if he was fully fit. Jude Bellingham would definitely be going. I think we all know that. I don't know about Cole Palmer. I'm assuming he'll go. I would feel sorry for Eberechi if he didn't get picked. But we'll see what happens. I mean, it was just a very boring game up until England scored. But we didn't, we did have a few chances today, but we just didn't, we just weren't good enough. If I'm being honest. It does worry me when I look at England where they're at now, and I see and I look at the fact that we're so far off of where we need to be. We're so far off of the level that we need to be at to be able to actually compete with teams like Portugal, France, who looking at England right now would have an absolute field day with us. There's no doubt about that. You know, and I mean, I do hope for the best. I do hope that, you know, by next year, by next summer, there'll have been a lot of improvement. There'll be a lot of, you know, things will be looking very different. I want to be able to go into that tournament with a positive mindset. I really want to be able to look forward to seeing England play at the World Cup next summer. Um, and I hope that we will be able to look forward to that. I hope that we won't have to be too nervous. I mean, obviously, we won't know for a while. I don't know. Well, I'm not entirely sure when they'll do the World Cup draw. I think that'll probably be in the new year. So we won't know. We probably won't know for a little while yet. Who will be playing in the World Cup group stages. Um, but the thing is with the World Cup, it's a lot. I would say it's a lot tougher than the Euros because there's a lot more teams in the World Cup and there's a lot more trickier teams in the World Cup. You've got Argentina and 10 with Brazil, Jet Portugal, Ronaldo, next year will be now or never for Cristiano Ronaldo. It has to be said. If he doesn't win the World Cup with Portugal next year, he's probably never going to win it. Simple as that. England, we looked a bit shaky at times today. Dan Burn, he worried me at times a little bit today. Actually, Dan Burn, he was a bit sloppy. That's the only real way I can describe England's performance today is sloppy and sluggish. Looking at the England performance today, and the fact that we struggled against, a team like Andorra, doesn't fill me with a lot of confidence. It does worry me looking at the England team now and the fact that we struggled so badly against fucking Andorra. We shouldn't be, realistically, we shouldn't really be struggling against teams like that. Simple as that. I don't really know what else I'm supposed to say. Other than we shouldn't be struggling against teams like that. We should be, we are miles better than them. And we should be, we should be struggling against teams like them. I mean, the only real positive thing I can say about the game today is I'm allowed to be scored and I'm allowed to be kept a clean sheet. There's not really anything else that I can say about it that, at the end of the day, it was a shit performance. And there's no denying that it was a bit of a shit performance today, and that we weren't at our very best. We certainly weren't at the, playing at the best level that we have been playing at yesterday. We were absolutely garbage. Simple as that. There's no real disputing that. And yeah, as I said, England are miles off of where they need to be. We're not at the level that we need to be at. We're in a very, we're in a very bad position. When I look at the England team, I do that. What I see is a team where there's a lot of changes that needs to be made, a lot of improvements that needs to be made between now and next summer. We'll see what happens. Hopefully by this time by I mean, if there was a major tournament this summer, I would say without a doubt we're not ready. We're nowhere near ready for the tournament. But hopefully by next summer, we will be ready. Hopefully we will be. Hopefully we'll be good enough to bring the fight to some of the best teams in the world. France, Portugal. We want to be able to give them a tough game. But the England team I'm looking at right now wouldn't give those teams a tough game at all. Teams like France, Portugal, and Argentina, all them lot would walk all over England right now. I know that might sound harsh, but at the end of the day, it's the truth. Teams like France, Argentina, and all them lot would walk all over us right now because we're not that good. We're way off of where we need to be at the level we need to be at to be able to compete with them. And there's a hell of a lot of work that needs to be done, a hell of a lot of improvements that need to be made between now and next summer. And it's not just small improvements that need to be made, it's massive improvements that need to be made between now and next summer. You know, please God, we're in a much better position and we're looking a lot better by the time next summer comes around. But we'll see what happens anyway. So I hope you enjoyed that review for today's England game. There might be a review for the England Senegal game. I mean, would it really be worth reviewing an international friendly? I mean, England looked like they thought today's game was an international friendly. You know, they didn't. It's like they didn't seem to head, and it was a major qualifier games that we need to actually flip and win. And it's actually very important that we do win these games. But the England players today didn't seem like they were too worried about winning the game. They seemed to be a bit, bored at times. That's what I can really say. Is that we were not at our best. We're miles off of where we need to be. What I was going to say. So I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you for another one soon. Bye bye.